Hi, friends. So, as the question poses in the title of this particular live feed, who gets punished the most economically, especially with taxes, in a way that makes your healthcare suck and your opportunities suck and all these other things, and what to do about it? So, right off the bat, I'll tell you that it's the middle class that gets all of the punishment, like just about all of the punishment, and the tax burdens, and you're saddled with all the debt. You're the one that has to pay for the social welfare and the corporate welfare. Unfortunately, the social welfare is what's most commonly talked about, but it's the corporate welfare that is 10,000 times more damaging to you, and nobody talks about it much. So the middle is saddled with all the debt, and the middle is saddled with corporate welfare and social welfare. And so you get all the punishment, and the harder that you work, if you have a job, even if you're poor, middle or poor, you have a job, you're going to work hard, you're going to make more money, the more you're going to be punished and penalized for it, so that the government can pay for the corporate welfare and the social welfare. Now, unfortunately, this has always been true, the middle class always, and there's exceptions, but as a summation of the whole middle class, they always fight for and vote for people that decimate their jobs and their ability to affect their livelihood. And here's a big one. There's a lot of people in the middle that do not believe that taxes should be raised on the billionaires. Taxes should be raised on the billionaires. I'm talking like 90%, maybe 92, 93%. If somebody's making $1 billion and they're keeping it all in a savings account or under a mattress, then they should lose over 90% of it in taxes. And that's what created, guess what? You think that's a bad idea, middle? If you're in the middle, you're like, no, don't penalize the people for being successful, because that's usually the argument given against that idea of taxing billionaires 90% of their income. The idea that the middle throws out there, throws up, because it's like regurgitating horrible stuff, is that you're punishing them for being successful. And no, it doesn't punish them. What it does is that it incentivizes them to either invest that money because they did so well. So you're going to either invest that money back into your country for the betterment of everybody, or you're going to lose the bulk of it in taxes. You want to know what gave us such a strong middle class and why once you were making a lot of money at your job, it's because of a 90% tax rate that we used to have back in the 1950s and I think maybe the 60s too. It was really the 1970s that we began to chip away at that. Because what does a 90% tax rate do for billionaires? What does it do for them? They have to invest it back so they capture the tax deductions, and they're not claiming $1 billion, but they're claiming something much smaller, and they don't lose their money that way. They get to keep it that way. So it's like if you're going to make a lot of money, if you want to keep it, you have to learn how to invest it for the betterment of your country, or you lose it in taxes. Period. End of story. So now what? Now the billionaire class, they get to keep their money, and everyone benefits because the only way they could keep their money is by investing it back into the economy. And that improves, gosh, that's why your healthcare sucks, because they don't have to pay taxes on it. And if they lose money, that's where corporate welfare comes in. That's ridiculous. So if you're in the middle class or poor, if you're just going to have a job and you're going to work for money, or you're even going to be self-employed and work for a paycheck, then you have to be on board with taxing billionaires 90+% of their income. You're not punishing them for being successful. And if you're planning on being successful like they are, you're not going to be punished for it either. It's not going to keep you back. You'll still be able to make as much money as you want. The key to the whole tax thing is that you get to keep your money provided you invest it. If you don't invest it and you just turn into a big cash hoarder saver, then you lose it. But unfortunately, in the 1970s, after we did have a 90% tax rate, which created the biggest middle class the world ever saw, also the first middle class the world ever saw, the first and the biggest the world ever saw post-World War II. And then all the other modernized countries, they learned from us, and now they're doing it, and they're doing much better than we are. But starting in the 1970s, sadly, in this country, the government started chipping away at that incentive for the billionaires to reinvest back into the country. They lowered the tax rate from 90% down to 80-something to 70-something, 60-something, 50-something, 40-something, 30-something. Now it's in the 30s. And even still, if you're among the top 200, top 400 richest families in America, you don't have to pay taxes on anything. And if you lose money, you get all of it reimbursed so that you never lose anything. That's as anti-capitalism, anti-free marketplace as it gets. And that's the crowd that's always telling you to be pro-capitalism and let the free market fix itself and pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. They're not playing in that same pool that they're telling you to play in, because they don't have to pay taxes on their income and they get their losses subsidized. And do you know who has to pay for all of that so that they don't have to pay taxes? Do you know who has to pay for their subsidies so that if they lose money, they get it all back? You do. You do, because you're going to go out there and work hard at a job, and the harder you work, the more money you make, the more you're going to lose to the government. And you have no other option because you're not a business owner and investor. You don't invest, period. And I'm not talking about stocks. That's totally different. You still have to pay a flat percentage on capital gains through the stock market. I'm talking old-fashioned, good old school investment in businesses. The kind of businesses the government wants us to do just a few major things. And this is in every modern country in the world. If you would divest in the development of housing for people to live in, then you get to reduce your taxes. You get tax breaks because it's a benefit for the country. If you invest in commodities like food and energy, because we need these things to live, then you get a break in your taxes because it's for the betterment of the country. If you invest in, oh gosh, what's another big one? I can't think of any right now, but there's a few main things the government wants us to do, and then you get the tax break. You got to create affordable, clean housing for people to live in, provide commodities like food and energy, and invest in overall business. Oh, create jobs. If you create jobs, especially the high-paying jobs, then you get to pay less in taxes. How cool is that? But that only works if you have a high tax rate for the wealthiest Americans, because then they're faced with the choice. I either invest in these areas so that everybody does good, I put that money to work, or I lose that money to taxes. But since the 1970s, the government said to these people, hey, you don't have to pay taxes anymore. We're not only going to reduce your tax rate, but if you're rich enough, you won't have to pay taxes at all anymore. And if you lose any money, no problem, we'll have the middle class reimburse you. And that's why you people with a job and everyone in the middle class and the poor, that's why your healthcare sucks. That's why you don't get opportunities that they get, so you have to create your own opportunities. There's nothing stopping you from that. But you're not going to get opportunities from them because it's slanted and rigged entirely against you so that they can have more while you have less. So all the middle out there that's railing against tax hikes for the wealthiest of the wealthiest because you think it's somehow punishing success, then that's what has decimated your jobs. That's why you can't find a job, or if you do, it's a low-paying job, and it's why your healthcare sucks and everything around you economically sucks because you keep fighting for and voting for policies like that. So understand that when billionaires have to pay 90% of their income in taxes, they're not going to do that. In the 1950s, they didn't. Instead, they took the better option of, well, gee, I don't want to lose my money to the government with a 90% tax rate. I'm going to invest it into our economy for the betterment of everybody. It's going to go towards high-paying jobs and housing and commodities, food and energy. And that way they get to keep their money as they did, and they actually get to grow their money because they get a return on their investment, provided it's a good one, so they're saddled with the burden of learning how to invest wisely for the betterment of everybody because it allows them to keep their money, and they make more money through the return on investment because they took the burden of learning how to invest wisely. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. A tax rate of upwards of 90% for the wealthiest of billionaires in America, that helps everybody, the poor, the middle. It even helps the rich. Like if you plan on being super successful, you better be voting for a 90% tax rate for when you get to that place, because it's going to force you to be a better investor, which is going to give you a better return on your investments, and you get to keep all of your money. You're not going to take that option of losing 90% of your income to the government. Are you kidding me? That's why that 90% tax rate has to be there. I keep saying it over and over again, but the middle has a really hard time hearing this. I don't understand what it is. But it needs to become common knowledge. You need to hear it so that we stop voting for knuckle draggers that decimate our jobs, because we decimate our jobs. We're a self-governing people, which means we get to vote for the politicians that are in office, and we constantly vote for the ones that decimate our jobs. So given that we're a self-governing people, it's not so much the politicians that stink as much as it is the public that stinks, because we constantly vote in favor of decimating our own livelihood. And we need to cut that shit out, man. So you better start turning in favor of a 90% tax hike for the billionaires. And if you want to be successful, I hope you join that billionaire class, because you're going to be like, lose 90% of all my money to the government in taxes, or I'm going to invest it back into my country so I get to keep my money, don't lose anything, and I'm going to get a return on investment on that investment, which means I'm going to have more money in addition to all that money I'm going to keep. Nobody's going to opt to lose 90% of their income to the government when the incentive is there to invest back into your country. Then everybody wins. I hope you guys get that. It is so crucially important. So the next time you hear somebody say, oh, don't increase taxes for the rich because then you're just punishing people for being successful. Well, hopefully now you're equipped on how to respond to that. Politely, of course. Very politely, because it's a tough one to get through to people. Now, the rule is, and this applies to everybody, including the rich, unless you're like the top 200 richest families in America. But the rule is, if you're going to do well, you need to invest into the country for the betterment of everybody, or you're going to lose the bulk of your income to the government. It's the way it should be. It's the way that it was when we had the largest middle class in the entire world, and now we don't. The middle class began shrinking in 1971, the same year we took our dollar from the gold standard, and it's also the time frame when we started chipping away at the 90% tax rate for the wealthiest of Americans. We started chipping that away, lowering it from 90 to 80 to 70 and so on. We took away the incentive for them to invest back into the country for the betterment of everybody. So what did they do? They kept more of it for themselves, invested less, which hurt you. And the middle class began shrinking that same time period in exactly the same year we took the dollar off the gold standard. And so the middle class started shrinking since that exact time. I mean, you've got a better shot at winning the lottery than that being a coincidence. So connect the dots here with me, okay? And it was 2 years ago in 2015. 2015, from 1971, this course of shrinking, the middle class was no longer the majority. The middle class was no longer the majority. The middle class is now the minority. The majority is the poor. From the 1950s to 2015, the middle class was the majority. But because we don't tax the rich at 90% and create that incentive for them to invest for the betterment of the country for everybody, because we took the dollar off the gold standard in 1971, the middle started shrinking that same year. Until, lo and behold, 2015, the middle is no longer the majority. The poor is the majority. That's what created the income gap. It's what the middle class fights for and votes for. They vote to decimate their own jobs, their own status, every day, relentlessly. And so far, they don't seem to be learning from that mistake. So we're coming to a day now where the middle class is so small and such a minority that you literally have to choose, do I want to be rich or do I want to be poor? Because there's not much in between anymore. So, and that gets to what to do about it. Since you're not getting any opportunity from our government, from our economic system, because it's totally slanted against you. It's rigged against you. It has to be so that the government can give the top 200 richest families in our country the ability to not pay taxes on the billions that they earn, and also to subsidize their losses, so that they don't have to play in the game of capitalism and free market that they are always telling you to play in, so they don't have to. That's why you're so decimated, and that's why you don't have the opportunities they have. However, and this is a big however, there's nothing stopping you from creating your own opportunity. That's what I did, because I'm working in the same system slanted against me. And when I make money every year as a business owner and investor, I have to learn how to do this. A hunger for learning, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing, so I had to learn. My burden is, well, gee, I'm going to lose it in taxes, or I'm going to invest it back into the economy in some way for the betterment of everybody. So of course I'm going to choose the latter. So as a result of that, I get to keep my money, I get to make more money and pay less in taxes. At a job, even as a self-employed dude, if you're not making passive money and residual money and reinvesting, at a job, and for most self-employed people, if you're going to make more money, you're going to pay more taxes. However, if you create your own opportunity, you can make more money and pay less in taxes. That option is not available at a job. It just isn't. It's very black and white. That option is not available at a job. If you want to make more money, you have to create opportunity for yourself. The system, the economy is completely slanted and rigged against you unless you're the top 200 families in this country. Like, if I ever get to be so good where I'm making billions of dollars, I would qualify probably to not have to pay taxes on that money anymore. And if I had a bad year and lost money, then I would get it subsidized back to me. That's really stupid. Nobody agrees that should be in place. But it is. Because The middle is constantly saying how they believe raising taxes for the ultra wealthy is somehow punishing them for success. No! Make it so that including everybody, including the top 200 wealthiest families, also are faced with the same choices that you and I are. That is, if they're going to do good, if we're going to do good, then we either have to reinvest it back into our country for the betterment of everybody, or we lose the bulk of our income to taxes to the government. And I'm telling you, nobody's going to pick the latter. People don't. That's what gave us the great middle class of the 1950s, 60s, and somewhat into the 70s. All the billionaires looked at that and said, I don't want to lose 90% of my income. I'm reinvesting that back into the country. And investing it back into high-paying jobs and commodities like food and energy and great places for people to live. That's where it went, and that's why everybody did so freaking good. And I know I'm repeating myself, but damn it, this is something that is just not sunken into the heads of almost everyone in the middle class, and the poor too, sadly, for that matter. So there you go, friends. We should all be made to play in the same pool. Equality for all, economic justice for all, social justice for all. But, you know, everyone's talking about social justice for all, which is great, but who's talking about economic justice for everybody? Not a lot of people. But economic justice for everybody would be we all have to play in the same pool. But if you're just rich enough, say the top 200 families, then you get to privatize your gains, which means you don't pay taxes on them, and you get to socialize your losses, which means you get it reimbursed back. And who pays for all of that? You do. Everyone minus the top 200 families in this country, or 400, whatever it is. So be in favor of a 90% tax rate for those folks so that they invest in, I don't know, giving you a high-paying job, or they have to make it up by paying higher taxes. Get what I'm saying? I hope it wasn't too confusing. All right, so I think I've repeated myself enough in so many different variant ways. Hopefully at least one of them sunk in, and you're going to be equipped to have this conversation with other people that you talk to, and in a way that's polite and respectful, because if you go at people with a bulldozer in an already upward battle, then you're just likely not going to sink through. You'll piss them off, and no progress will be had, ever. Alright, so that's it. And if you want to know more of what I'm about, my website is tomberkenmeyer.com. tomberkenmeyer.com. Take out the space, all lowercase, just like you see spelled here on social media. Alright, I'm going to go and look through the comments real quick. I know there's a lot of them as I was talking. I wasn't really looking. I see a lot of people watching. Dawn, Kimberly, Charlene, Shelly, Lori, Helen. Charlene says hi. Hi, Charlene. Tamsin, Liz, Tanya. No comments yet, just a bunch of people watching. Jane, Paulette, Lori, Kayla, Victoria, Michelle, Heather, another Michelle, a few Michelles, J. Marie, Jill, Doreen, Sally. Sally says hi. Hi, Sally. Does anyone have any comments? Linda. Hi, Linda. Nivea. Linda. Thank you, Linda, for sharing this, and anyone else who shares this. Oh, a comment. Jill says, also the concept of success should mean more than just how much money you have. Success should also refer to how much you are helping society, how great your art is, how solid your personal relationships are. Yeah, you're totally right. But I mean, for the purpose of this conversation, we're talking about money. And money is an easy variable to measure because we can all count money. So that's why money makes things really simple and sort of the ultimate leveling of the playing field, money is. But you're totally right, Jill. Let's see here. Yep, top 2%. More like Jill, it's the top 0.2% that doesn't have to pay tax on their gains, and they get their losses reimbursed back to them. So they're not even playing in the capitalist game or the free market game that they say everyone else should. If it were truly a capitalist system, then they would be paying their fair share, that's for damn sure. And they wouldn't be able to socialize their losses. But it's about the top 0.2% that gets away with that game. And why is it the top 0.2%? Because they're the ones that have enough money to make campaign donations to politicians, and you know, it's a legalized system of bribing, basically, which creates, by default, an enormous conflict of interest to where they're bidding for their donors instead of for us. So that's why ridiculous, obnoxious policies like that exist, that slants everything economically against you and me in favor of them. So if you don't create your own opportunity, you're fucked. And you can do it. I did it, and other people have done it. Your fate is in your hands. Make your own opportunities, set your goals, and strive to achieve them. Right on, Kim. Jill, even the beaches in New Jersey you have to pay to go on now. That sucks. That's awful, Jill. mankind is the only species that wants to tax the land. Like we own land, right? No, we don't own land. Keep repeating yourself to the whole world hears. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Tom, sharing. Bye. Bye, Linda. Thank you for sharing. Carol is watching. Very bad. Okay, so I'm all caught up. There was a few pretty cool comments here. And for those of you that just joined, I'll post this. Facebook is really quick. It'll go back up. Jill, I think you got in right after the really good stuff. But you and I pretty much, I think we see eye to eye on this, Jill, based on some of the comments you read. So I think you'll really enjoy this rant that I went on earlier. But you'll see it on my Facebook timeline, archived there within a minute after I tap finish, and you can go back and watch it. I recommend that you do, because it's something, I'm sick of seeing the middle class do things stupidly to decimate their own ability to pay for food and pay bills and put food on the table and just afford their livelihood. And the middle class decimates themselves. It's an inside job. It's so stupid. We blame politicians, but they represent us. So if they stink, it's because we stink. All right. That's all I got for you, kids. I'm going to go ahead and finish this now. TomBerkenmeyer.com is my website. Feel free to share this. And I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.